introduction. It's really good to be here tonight to talk to you all about a topic that's near and dear to my heart. And it's near and dear to my heart because over the years in my experience of learning how to say no, it really affords me to do the things that matter most in my life. So as someone said, when you say no to something, you're saying yes to something else. And when you're saying yes to something else, you're saying no. So what I'd like to do is I want to start off with a little story. And some of the graphics aren't, I'm not high tech. But this is Ohio Wesleyan University, the Battling Bishops. And for those of you who don't know where it is in Delaware, Ohio. And that is about 25 miles north of Columbus. And I want to share a story about a young lady's journey to getting to know. She found herself at Ohio Wesleyan University in the mid-'80s. Very happy to be in college, a barrier breaker in a lot of ways by being there. Ohio Wesleyan at that time was a small college, but very diverse. It was over 160 countries represented. It was 1,500 students at the time, and not an nth of them were people of color. And so it was a lot of barriers and a lot of things to happen there. Well, she got there and she got very involved. She's a very organized person, can take on a lot of stuff, and she makes it happen. And so by her third year, she finds herself second vice president of her sorority. She is also the second vice president of the Student Union on Black Awareness. She's also engaged in politics. She is also engaged in sociology and helping out the sociology department. And she had a side business. And her side business was she was a typist. She could type 80 to 85 words per minute. And when she got to college, she discovered very quickly that seniors are lazy. And the word got on the street that this person could type really fast, and if you were in a bind, go to her and she'd type your paper. So her niche was working with seniors, and she would charge extra for rush jobs. There was a lot of those. But sociology was her major. And during her third year, she started working at a group home as well. And so she had all these balls in the air. And she started to have stomach pains. She couldn't figure it out. And so in the spring of her junior year, one night, she's sitting in her room and she's staring down the barrel of about 3 deadlines, 2 of her own classes, 1 sorority deadline, a couple of phone calls coming in for papers, and she says, what am I gonna do? What are my options? And the options were, I can stay up all night and just push it through and get everything done. I can try to go to sleep, get a few hours in and get up and risk not getting up at all, or I can just say, forget it. But she chose to work it out, stay up all night, and just push through and get it done. But she had a stomachache. And so she went to the college clinic and ended up going to the hospital and finding out that you are going to be on the verge of an ulcer, young lady, if you don't get yourself together. And it was at that point she said, I have to learn how to say no. And it was very hard because just like I listened as we went around the room, I gotta tell you, some of y'all got some weak nose. We're gonna work on that tonight, okay? Weak nose, you were scared to say it, like, ooh, I did it. But she said, I gotta learn how to say no. And it was very hard. And so she went to Harts, and Harts is like a Big Lots in Ohio. And on her poor college student budget, she found a handheld tape recorder. And she said, no, 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 and she just practiced saying no. So she's equipped. She's going out, she's gonna do this thing, and she runs into the dean of the School of Sociology. And he says, oh, you know, we've seen your work and we really want you to work on, and she says, yes. And then she goes, wait, no. She pulls out her tape recorder and she says, 1 minute, no. And he looks confused and she says, fast forward, no. I'm really not gonna be able to do that. And he said, oh, okay. I said, well, let me tell you. Why don't you call so-and-so and they will be able to help you? And he said, oh, okay. So that young lady was me. And I learned how to say no, because when I looked at all the things that I was doing, and I'm staring down this barrel of all these deadlines, only, you know, I'm like, shoot, my mother sent me here to get a college education, not to, you know, do this or do that or run this or run that. My whole goal is to leave here with a degree in 4 years. And so I had to think about it. And so when we think about saying no, do any of these people look familiar to you? Okay, and I will tell you, okay, my name is Wanda, and Wonder Woman and I, like seriously, when I was growing up, she was my girl, okay? But how many of you all have all these different hats that you wear? I heard mom, I heard things about work, I heard, you know, we've got all these activities, and really, I have 2 children, a 20-year-old and a 25-year-old. And when they're in those high school years, like, you just lose your own life. My daughter was on the gymnastics team, and somehow I had signed up to do all this stuff, and I kept saying, but I didn't sign up for this. Well, you have to come and run the concession stand, and we have to come over your house, and you know, it's sectional time, and we're gonna do it at our school, and so we need a sectional mom. And I found myself saying yes to all of this stuff that I didn't really sign up for. And I'm going, okay, we have to cool this down. So how many of you all have a secret cape in your closet, or you feel like you got that secret cape? Well, let me just tell you something. If you don't know this, being a superhero is a full-time job. It's a full-time job, so you can't take on superhero, okay? So just put your capes away. Put them away, because if you already got a full-time job and then you wear any of those other hats, you really cannot be a superhero. So let me ask you a question. Why we don't like to say no? We don't like to say no because of what? Why don't we like to say no? Somebody said, I'm Minnesota nice. And so people just say yes to stuff in Minnesota.
You don't want to hurt people's feelings.
I'm from Georgia. We put our cards on the table and just say it. So, you know, imagine my experience the last 15 years being here. They're real interesting. But why else don't we like to say no?
We're afraid of missed opportunities.
Afraid of missed opportunities. What else?
Fear of rejection.
Fear of rejection. Yep.
Disappointing.
Disappointing other people. Yep. How about being seen as rude? You know, because if you think about, if you have children and you have gone through 2s, I had terrible 3s, like my kids were just nuts. We breezed through 2 and then 3 got real difficult. I'm going, no, it's not supposed to be like this. It's supposed to be 2. But they are learning that power. You know, no becomes a very good word for a toddler, but we're afraid to seem rude. We want to help, you know, as women, we are giving, you know, and so we have to learn the foundational things to say no. And what I find, I work with single low-income moms. I've been doing nonprofit work for almost 30 years, and I have a consulting business where I do coaching. And I work with many different people in coaching, but I find when I work with women, and I ask the question, who are you? Not a lot of people can just answer that question for me off the bat. People tear up because they know who they are, but they've been doing all these other things for so long that they really don't. And I've been there myself, where I couldn't answer the question, I don't know what I really like to do. I don't know what fun is. And so before we get to saying no, I think it's important for us to really understand foundational pieces of why we, as this is one of my favorite topics, I have to stay on task there. But when you think about it, I think three things are very helpful to learning how to say no. One is really understanding who you are. What is your mission? What is your purpose in life? What's important to you will serve as your foundation for being able to say no very gracefully. And so, no, when you say no, it doesn't really mean that you're being rude. I heard the word self-care. Sometimes saying no means I'm taking care of myself. And also your mission, your goals, your values. What's important to you? What are you working on? Someone said, I said no because my family is important. And so when you think about it, in order to really say no comfortably, you have to have your foundation and build from that. So how many of you guys are familiar with Stephen Covey's The Big Rock? Okay. Since we have some people who aren't, I'm gonna just kind of give us a refresher for those who've heard it before. But this comes from his work, Stephen Covey, First Things First. And he's talking to a group of students, and he says, one day this expert was speaking to a group of business students, and to drive home a point, he used an illustration I'm sure those students will never forget. And after I share it with you, you'll probably never forget it either. As the man stood in front of the group of high-powered overachievers, he asked, okay, time for a quiz. Then he pulled out a 1-gallon wide-mouthed mason jar and set it on a table in front of him. Then he produced about a dozen fist-sized rocks and carefully placed them one at a time into the jar. When the jar was filled to the top and no more rocks would fit inside, he asked, is this jar full? Everyone in the class said yes. Then he said, really? He reached under the table and pulled out a bucket of gravel. Then he dumped some gravel in it and shook the jar, causing the pieces of gravel to work themselves down into the spaces between the big rock. Then he smiled and asked the group once more, is the jar full? By this time, the class was on to him. Probably not, one of them answered. Good, he replied, and reached under the table and brought out a bucket of sand. He started dumping the sand in, and it went into all the spaces left between the rocks and the gravel. Once more, he asked the question, is this jar full? No, the class shouted once again. He said, good. Then he grabbed a pitcher of water and began to pour it in until the jar was filled to the brim. Then he looked at the class and asked, what is the point of this illustration? One eager beaver raised his hand and said, the point is no matter how full your schedule is, if you really try hard, you can always No, the speaker replied, that's not the point. The truth this illustration teaches us is, if you don't put the big rocks in first, you'll never get them in at all. What are the big rocks in your life? And I want you guys to just pass this around and think about, as you get it, what are the big rocks in your life? Is it a project that you want to accomplish? Time with your loved ones, your faith, your education, your finances, a cause, teaching or mentoring others. Remember to put the big rocks in first, or you'll never get them in at all. And so by going to the foundation, you understand the big rocks. But I want to add something there as well. When you think about, like, you know your foundation, you know your mission, you know who you are, you know what your purpose is. I like to think of my giving as giving out of the overflow. Okay, so when he poured the water in, even though the sand was soaking it in, water, if he kept pouring, water would come out. And that's what you want to give. You want to give from your overflow. You don't want to just give from, take the rocks, and you want to give from your overflow. And when we are full as women, understanding our purpose, understanding who we are, understand our mission and values, we are full, and then you can give out of your overflow. Say overflow.
Overflow.
All right, well, now we are going to get to a little work. I've got a couple of worksheets. One is the big rocks, and the other one is the power of no. And so I'm gonna start papers around on both sides. I'm gonna ask you to think about your big rocks and start to write your big rocks. What are your big rocks right now? And then think about, I call them pebbles. What are some pebbles that maybe can go in after that? And once you spend a couple of minutes doing your big rocks, then we'll move to the power of no, and I'll walk you through that as well. So if you've had time to just kind of write your big rocks down, and trust me, Linda warned me to stay on task. So, she's a taskmaster like that. But I like to provide tools that you can also take with you and have time for reflection. So if we just want to take a quick look at the yellow sheet, which is a workbook, so to speak, that I use in coaching to help people really clarify that. But starting with your big rocks, you start to work on your foundational things. And in the worksheet, the first thing is, what do you need to say no to right now? Give yourself permission to say no. Sometimes we think we have to say yes to everything, but when you get in that quiet, still place, and you really think about what are some of the things that I really need to say no to right now, and you can look back at your big rocks and, sometimes I've listed out everything that I've been doing, and then I put it up against the big rocks, and I'm like, oh my gosh, these are pebbles, these are sand, like, what am I doing? So that's another way that these two things can work together. And then second is you have to look at what are your beliefs about saying no, and really get firm about why, what do I feel when I say no? What do I believe about no? How was no used in my family? How have I carried some of that with me? And then after you figure out that, two, what's stopping you from saying no? Going back to some of those things that we mentioned earlier. What's the fear behind saying no? And sometimes being able to say, do those really make sense? Like trying to validate that. Like, is that really possible? If I say no, I'm gonna get fired. Whereas you've seen in some cases, most times you don't. You can negotiate when you stand up for yourself, and it actually opens up doors. So if you think it's gonna get you one result and it gets you another. And then the fourth is understanding the yes trap, why we say yes. And so working through there, when I say yes, I feel. When I say yes, I want other people to think of me as. And kind of working through number 4, understanding the yes trap. And then the other no, KNOW, know your priorities. And being able to go through there, once again, you will see a connection back to your big rocks. At least you should, or either you'll see some misalignment when you start to really compare those things. And then the last sheet is it's some tips preparing to say no, and then going through some of the techniques and getting a plan of action. Like my plan of action was I knew I had to do something. Like for me, anytime my health is at stake, and that's just how it's been from the time I was 20, we gotta it's a plan because my health is very important. And so getting a plan of action, and even, you see the no written on the hand, whatever you gotta do. I will go into meetings with no with the circle, and I am ready to whip it out at any given moment. No. But get your plan of action together and being able to actually write those things out. And trust me, on my first attempt, I failed miserably. First out of the gate, the dean asked me something, and the first thing I say is yes. And I'm going, wait, no, I'm on a plan. I got a plan. Hold on. Digging through my bag and saying. And the first no was like so weak. Now, what happens when we give a weak no? Like, think about a time you said no and you finally ended up saying yes. Like, What do you think happened there?
Lack of confidence. Yeah.
Lack of confidence?
Or is
Yeah,
that guilt?
guilt.
Yeah, Kathy.
Yeah.
People don't take you seriously.
People don't take you seriously. Or, now this is probably sad to say, but if somebody gives me a weak no, I'm going in for the kill. I am. I'm like, oh yeah, give me a few more minutes and I can probably get to yes. And that's what people are thinking when we give them, a week yes. So this is a tool that because it does take time, but I wanted to walk through it. And before we move into the skills building piece here, I want to open the floor and ask if anybody has any questions, or what is your initial thoughts and reactions to some of the stuff that we've talked about? And I know some of you are talking about it in your small circles as well, but how does it strike you? Is it doable? Can you build up to it?
I think that for me, it is doable. But what I think of when I say no, or what I do often is say no because ... You know, I feel the need to always provide some sort of reason or justification of why I'm saying no. And I would like to get to the place where I can just say no.
We got some
More
techniques
firm,
for you. Because you build up to it. I mean, but when we give excuses, it gives people another edge around, like, okay, well, you can't do 2 hours, can you do 1? Okay, you really wanna say no. And so, once you are able, like in my head, when people call me, I'm going through my rocks, like automatically. When I read an email, I start going through my rocks. How does this line up with a rock? How does this line up with what fits best for me? Someone said it earlier. And if it doesn't, I don't feel bad about saying no, but there are ways to say that. So let's move into some practicing. Maybe. Okay, the power of no. So, no, nope, 9, ja. Like, learn it in whatever language you need to. Like, I used to be able to say no in 15 languages. Because if people didn't understand me, and I thought no was a universal word, and it's not, but there is a word for no in every language. And so being able to really figure out your audience, like who's asking, what's the return on my investment? What am I saying no to if I say yes? Is a good one for me. Like when I figure out what the lost cost is, as they say in the finance world sometimes, that helps me be able to make a decision. But you have the word no, like a toddler, it has power, but you don't have to yell it out. But being able to say no is important. Some people don't like to use that word, so they say, I can't, like they dance around the whole thing, and if a person hasn't heard no, guess what? They're coming back again. They're gonna reword the request, and they're just gonna come back because they had not heard the word no. And an example of that, I am responsible for curriculum development in my job, and I create proprietary information. And I have people who will call me sometimes, even within our own system. I have a system set up in place, and they will ask for things. And I don't know how many ways this Sunday I say it, because it is proprietary information. We do not provide digital copies. Here's, what do you need? You need 5 workbooks? I'll send you the workbooks. And so the other day I just said, listen, nope, 9, not gonna happen, no, don't ask. It's okay. I had not said no. It was the fluffy stuff that, I'm in a workplace, I have to work with these people. I like them, I really do. My no doesn't mean I don't like them. My no means I can't afford to have our product out on the internet, because once it goes, I can't be responsible for it anymore. And so understanding that one of my big rocks is to produce material that changes lives for women and children, I have to say no to that. So when I think about the cost of that, but it dawned on me, you have never said no. You just not flat out came out and said no. So it is important to use the word no. The next thing is be brief. Like, don't give your whole life story. Do not apologize for saying no. Be brief, because the more information you give people, they will use it against you to get you to say yes. Like, they'll figure out how to reconfigure the request to get you moving toward there. But, you know, sometimes just a no doesn't work. And we don't want to be rude, but it's like, you know what? Here's one of my better ones. That is a wonderful cause. Oh my gosh, that is absolutely awesome. But I'm gonna be able, I can't say yes. I need to say no to that because it just does not fit in with my quarterly goals. You've acknowledged, because people want acknowledgement and support for what they're doing. And I, you know, the word no was in there, and I just didn't go into details about what my quarterly goals were. Like, that's my stuff. But it gives enough information to say, you know what? And if you say, if you don't use the word no, most people say, well, maybe that's a maybe. It's a maybe. And so, use the word no, be specific, be brief, be honest. Like, don't be making up stuff. If you are going to the play with your family, just say, no, sorry, I am not able to do that because we have plans to go to the play. Instead of saying, oh, I don't feel good, and then they see you at the play. You're looking flaky, right? You're looking flaky, because guess what? They going to the play. Like, that's a yes for them. So be honest, don't fabricate stuff. But you don't have to give your whole life story when you say no. Be respectful. You know, you can say no, and this is something I've taught my kids. Even with their father, bless their hearts. Be respectful. You can say no, but be respectful. You know, and when we acknowledge what other people are doing, and you know, if you think it's a worthy cause, saying it's a worthy cause, or that's great, it's awesome. However, it doesn't align with what I'm focused on right now. Give alternatives. You know, if you are not the person to do it, don't take it on because, you know, you're gonna read 5 books and Google 15 things and learn how to do what they want you to do. Just say, you know what, that's great. I'm honored that you called me and offered me the opportunity to learn something new. However, that's not really my forte. But if you know someone, why don't you call Susie Jones down the street? I mean, she is awesome. Now, I'm not committing Susie, but I think it's worth an ask. And then I will, you know, say to Susie, hey, I made a referral. But being able to maybe give an alternative. If you like are really struggling with it, this will get you out every time. It'll buy you some time anyway. Just say, you know what, can I get back to you in about 2 hours? Can I get back to you the next day? And then you can really muster up the no, or either figure out, but it buys you time. Like if you have a hard time just saying no to people right then and there, say, let me get back to you. And how about those last minute requests? How many of you guys love those? I'm really working on this project and I need, you know, something by tomorrow. And it's like, yes, I feel your pain. However, I'm not gonna be able to do that because I'm also working on something that's due. You know, sometimes I might offer, if you get it done, I can take a look at it. If I really can. If I really can't, then like don't be taking on people's monkeys. Like, because they will monkey on your back, they will give you their monkey. And you're loaded down with your cape and your S is covered up. Okay, because the monkeys are all over you and you can't even see your S on your cape and you're being superwoman. But just being able to say, you know what, buy yourself some time. Nope, I'll get back to you. And then be ready to repeat it. Be ready to repeat no. Okay, that's why by the time I got strong on the tape recorder, I was probably up to 10. And if people kept talking, I said, oh, wait a minute, and I fast forward. Like I had a counter, so I knew where the no's were. And if people were really going overboard, I just go straight to the last, no! And then I smile and say, thank you for asking. And say it with a smile. Like say it with a smile, seriously. So that people know that you're not being angry. In 7th grade, Mr. Arnold was our assistant principal, and you know, you get called to the assistant principal office and he would say, get your mama on the phone. And you'd be like, he is smiling, my mama's gonna beat me down. But he smiled And why do you smile, Mr. Arnold? He said, because I'm not angry. I'm gonna have discipline in my school, and I care about you. So, I mean, say it with a smile. When you're on the phone, because people really do hear smiles, and so if you are saying it with a smile, they can hear the concern. They can hear that, you know what, I really do care about what you're doing. However, I'm just not able to do that. And the last thing, after you are ready to repeat it, know that it's not easy. It is really not easy, particularly if you are so used to saying yes all the time. Some other key phrases are, I'm really not able to commit to that right now. Yeah, and people will say, well, when can you? Let me see. I'll get back to you in 2 days. Okay, and then in 2 days I come back and say, yeah, I looked it over. I really can't commit to this. Let me know how it goes. if I'm really interested in knowing. If I'm not, I just can't commit to it. I'd love to do this, but, but I try not to use the word but, because people just take that as a negative. So I always use however. But if you say, I'd love to do it, but people know that something is coming at the other end of that, so they kind of expecting the no if you use that word. But simply being able to say, no, I can't. I'm sorry. No, I can't. And not I'm sorry in apologetic and you're gonna give them your whole like rundown and then they're gonna talk you into doing it. Cause they will. I've been there. I've been up to 7 no's and then found myself, being the sectional mom for the Park Center gymnastics group and going with 16 girls running around my house all day, wanting to eat and and all that stuff. And the whole time thinking, how did you say yes to this? And at 3 o'clock say, okay girls, gotta go. But when you think about the importance of your big rocks, you have to make time for what matters most. And I'm on several boards. I have my business. I do a lot of stuff at work. Like when I leave here, I'm going back to work. But that's a big rock for me right now. Learning and understanding our big rocks are important. So when I say no to something, I'm saying yes. Let me introduce you to my little people. So the little one in my arms is Serenity Walker. She is my granddaughter by my oldest daughter, and they live in Atlanta. So when I say no, I am saying yes to FaceTime with her. I'm saying yes to talking on the phone with her, catching up with my daughter. The 2 little boys, I have been adopted as Nona. They are just a special family that God has placed in my life, that I am like their grandmother. And so even this weekend, I said no to them, and like they were like, what? I said no. They were like, can we come over to your house? I'm like, no. Like I was getting in no's all over the place. But the big rock for me over the holidays was I need to rest because I got like 6 things planned between tonight and next Saturday that I have to be responsible for, and I need to be rested. I need to be in my right mind. I need to not be, and you all don't know what I'm talking about. It needs to make sense, and so I need to think about it. And so they kept calling, and I told my youngest daughter, don't answer the phone, it's them. She's like, but you love them. I'm like, yes, but I know they want to come over, and I don't know how to say no to them. So I am, after all that, I'm still working on how to say no. And so, you go through these cycles of getting really good at it, but I do find that the more that I understand what the rocks are that are in my jar, and I understand the things that are pebbles. So you talk about prioritizing, and the pebbles are important, but they're not as important as the rocks to me. And the sand stuff is just like, yeah, no. And then you gotta pour the water on. And because I wanna give out of my overflow, I have to make sure that I'm saying yes to all of the big rocks in my life. So I want to encourage you tonight. Say no so that you can live, because heart attacks are real. Ulcers are real. Exhaustion is real. And if you don't say no, your body will shut you down. It knows when it's had enough. And it's really hard. I've been there on a comeback from being just exhausted and my body saying, okay, you're not smart enough to stop and slow down. I'm gonna help you. So we don't want to get to that point in our lives where our body has to help us. So I encourage you, learn to say no. Get your game plan together. Use these tools that I provided for you and practice. Like, the only other person that I cannot say no to is my grandmother. She can call me and ask me anything, but she said, are you coming home for Thanksgiving? And I said, grandmother, as much as I love the South, as much as I'd love to be in warmer weather, I'm gonna have to forego this wonderful opportunity. Like that's a favorite of mine, forego the wonderful opportunity. And she said, but why? And I said, yeah, Grandma, I really don't have a reason right now. Can I get back to you in 2 days? But she said, okay, finally she said, okay, but it's really hard. There will be some people who it's just really hard to say no. And you think about, why can't I say no? You know, it is a belief for me. I honor my grandmother. She's 80. I don't know, how long she's gonna be here with me. I'm very blessed. I had my great-grandparents up until 2 years ago. And so my belief is anytime I can say yes to them, my parents, I wanna say yes, but at the same time, even there still has to be balance with it. So be balanced, and I hope that what I've shared with you tonight encourages you. It gives you the understanding that it is doable. And when you understand the foundational things, your goal is to get to the overflow. And so as we come to the holiday season, because this gets really crazy, but I decided in September, seriously, I knew I wasn't going home in September. I just couldn't tell anybody. Because they would have talked me out of it. But I decided in September, I'm doing no parties this year. Not gonna do it. It's too stressful. I'm not gonna say yes to the stress. And I've already decided, here's how it's going down for them. Made my little list, it's done, but I'm doing no parties. So don't invite me to any parties. The pie party was like right before the no. But when Linda asked me, I said, you do realize I may have to say no to you. She said yes, but I was able to say yes, and I'm certainly glad I was able to come out. Thank you for allowing me in your space this evening. And if you have any questions, I'm on the email deal. Email me. If you need tools, if you want to practice, if you need a kick in the pants, if you need somebody to ask you why you really say yes, I'm happy to be that person for you. So thank you guys very much.